Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
De Baja California Sur,
Baja Coastal Institute, the University of Baja California Sur, and the State Water Commission. We welcome you all to this webinar, More Water for Baja California South. This is the last of this series. There will be more things coming up. We started on October 31st with a webinar about the water situation. Then we dealt with water harvesting. 14th November, ecological techniques to treat water in cities. 21st November, harvesting water from the atmosphere. And today, November 28th, desalination. This is a very important subject. That's why all these subjects we have been dealing with, we have been counting on experts that we have selected to have a global focus. You can all make your comments in the chat. You can follow us on Facebook as well, and we have you have your translation. My name is Pilu, and hello everyone. I would like to ask you if we would like to ask you to tell us where you are connected from. Where you send us your comments. So here we have two very important guests. Dr. Jaime Gómez Gutiérrez, who is going to talk about desalination or no desalination. That's the question. Then desalination as an optional source of water. And we are also going to have with us engineer Tatiana Felix-Monson. She's the director of the State Water Commission. This organism has been attached to all these webinars, but this is the first one. One of them is with us. Our first guest is Dr. Jaime Gómez about desalination or no desalination. He is a marine biologist. He studied his doctorate in Oregon. Sorry, I didn't get the name of the college. And he is now interested in responses to help the ecosystem, the marine ecosystem. Okay, go ahead, Doctor. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. Okay. So we live in a planet which is very unique in the solar system. 97% of the water is in the oceans. But the water that most organisms in the ecosystem, in the Earth ecosystem, use fresh water, which is only 3%, and a lot of it is in the way of ice, and but it is very little accessible. It is not something that we can have all the time or everywhere in the planet. So we have to give water a very good use. Like my mom used to say, a house that is clean is not the one that you clean a lot, but the one that stays clean. So it's not a matter of desalination of more water, but to be more careful and not waste water. So in fact, from the perspective of desalination, there are many countries that are developing this technique. There are about 16,000 desalination plants in the world. Most of them are in the same latitude. Like there are desert areas where there is a lot more scarcity of fresh water. So in 177 countries where they use desalination, some countries from the first world, like the United States, they consider desalination is too costly and that it shouldn't be done everywhere in general. In fact, it should be done in areas where the water is very scarce. For instance, in Saudi Arabia or Qatar, where the World Championship, water is very scarce. And Antofagasta in Chile, where you can see they simply don't have any other solution but to desalinize seawater. But in areas like where we live, in Baja California South, we are surrounded by sea. It's tempting, and we could say, yeah, well, that's the solution. We have water all around us, and we could use this water. Nevertheless, BC, Baja California, even if it's known as a desert, it doesn't have conditions that are really desertic like Saudi Arabia or Antofagasta, where there is not one plant. We get water during the storms in summer, and there's accessibility to water. So what we can think, instead of considering desalination plants, is what can we do with the water that we have? Can we improve its usage and the structures to harvest more water from what comes from the storms during hurricanes and rains? Or simply should we waste less water? In fact, the city of La Paz, it's small. The capital of Baja California South has 98,000 inhabitants. I am from Mexico City, and but I've been living for years here, and I've seen population multiply by 3 in the past decades. The usage of water is one of the requisites more needed for the next decade. This is the Bay of La Paz, and it has in a very big way, and this city depends on some freshwater wells that are close to the city. Some of them are also for agricultural use, And the problem is that they have been used in such a high pressure that the levels have descended, and that meant filtration of saline water from the bay. So that means our water has less quality. It's water with a lot of salt, and possibly it is necessary to desalinize those wells. That could be an alternative to have better quality water and accessible. There are two methods, generally speaking, to obtain water. One is the thermal desalination. So you get the water from the sea, you warm it up, and once it evaporates and it's inside a chamber, it condensates, and when the temperature descends, and in that way it's eliminating the salts. The other method is the thing is that uses a lot of energy. To warm up the energy, you need a lot of energy, electricity. Another method, very frequent, is the inverse osmosis. So it's filters that the water goes through filters, and they get all the salts, but it can have an impact in the community. When, for instance, when one goes to swim in the sea, if you drink a little bit of water, you are getting a lot of organisms in just one drop of water. Here there's a photograph of some phytoplankton, which is like little algae, microscopic. Those are responsible for half the photosynthesis, for the production of the oxygen that we breathe. So they give a very important service to the planet. So when they carry out the photosynthesis. So also they get solar light, and that becomes the zooplankton. In zooplankton have very strange names that I'm not going to mention, but in fact there are lots of larvae and eggs that in general maybe you know, like the eggs of all the fish, and the larvae that are deposited in the water column. Those are consumed by desalination plants, or for like mollusks, or we have to look after them. Desalination has developed a lot of methods have been developed. Because, like it happens in several regions, where if there are very big desalination plants and they use a lot of waters, like with a lot of phytoplankton gets trapped in the filters, or they die during the desalination. And when they die, and in fact those are the babies of all the mollusks and all the fish that we eat. For instance, for those of us who eat in coastal areas, we like to eat fish, tacos, and etc. But all those things, the life cycle of all these organisms, they have a very important phase when they are larvae, and that's why we think the water that we receive in summer, like here you see after a summer storm, the water flows, and we should consider how that water can be harvested and taken directly and to be used. In fact, there are many possible alternatives to desalination. For instance, we could think of better harvesting techniques that can be carried out in like through channels that could take water to other areas, or to fix, for instance, in the La Laguna, in the Sierras, they have developed other systems to attract water. One of the big challenges is not to consume more water, but to modernize the hydraulic system. There are a lot of leaks in the system. It's very complex to maintain the system, but initially we should try and modernize this hydraulic system. So it's estimated that between 10 to 20% of the water that is produced is wasted and it's lost because of leaks. Another option is to do desalination of the wells that have become salty, and that won't have such a big impact in the plants. There are a lot of the filtration areas. There can be a natural filter, and that doesn't affect any other life. And people should be conscious that we live in an area where water is very limited, and we have to look after it. Another of the big problems that desalination has is not the amount, but the quality of the water. When the acidity goes back to the ocean, that is really bad for all the organisms, and it can affect them because they are used to living under certain conditions, and it also it affects both the bottom dealers or the ones that live in the column of water. So what I think is, in fact, is that when one works with plankton and you see a sample and you see so many thousand organisms and species, one realizes that of the possible impact. When you don't know that, you think, okay, well, I take the water, but the truth is that we have to be very careful. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Jaime Gómez Gutiérrez.
Very much, Dr. Jaime Gómez Gutiérrez. Please be reminded, all those of you that are listening, please let us know where you are contacting us from, and also if you want to make comments, questions in our chat in Facebook and also in YouTube, where we are presenting this webinar with simultaneous translation. Our next speaker is Dr. Enrique Troyo, and he's an engineer, agronomist engineer, and he's a doctor in sciences by the university, the UNAM. He has published a lot of scientific articles and he's from the Mexican Academy of Sciences and etc. He is a
diagnóstico y manejo sostenible de cuencas, calidad de agua y suelo, hidroecología, uso sostenible.
Okay, those are some of the researches he has carried out.
Adelante, Dr. Troyo, por favor, con
so please go ahead, Dr. Troyo, with your presentation. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk about the technology for desalination as an additional source of water in the context of a management plan for the offer and demand of water. Okay, let's. So I agree with what Dr. Oscar mentioned before about the increase in population. So what is the problem that is coming close to us, and how this technology of desalination can be applied? Let's see. Where are we going? Do we have information from the Water Commission, and we have reports of the water availability from the aquifers. Every 3 years, this is updated. Might be a bit delayed, but all these reports from the majority of the aquifers, there is not enough water. So we have minus 5 million cubic meters. Cabo Pulmo, Cabo San Lucas, they are all in the negative. Lately, whatever. A very interesting question is what are these reports good for? They are published and available in the webpage. What are they used for? So we interpret that there's no availability of water. So you see, for instance, in La Paz, -7, -8. Would that mean there is no water? What is the logic of the planning and development? Why are we giving new permits to construct, or new permits for tourist developments? Well, families grow, etc. They multiply. That's natural, but I'm getting a very bad connection. I don't know about all of you, but I just cannot follow him.
Conlleva la construcción de utópica de un documento lleno de candados, ¿verdad? Lleno de un no se puede.
Okay.
Y esto llevaría a que el constructor o el desarrollador se ampare, o mejor paga una multa y se va a juicio.
Okay, so he's all right. So for tourist developments. So in 1995 in Los Cabos, there was this everything was modified. The configuration was modified, and right. Okay, I'm going, just in case it's me, I'm going to exit and come back. Okay, there's been many plans since 1995, 2004, 2011. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm going to exit and come back because I don't know if I am the problem, but I cannot hear him. Okay, in Los Cabos there 2,093,000 inhabitants. It's grown very, very much. Like after there's Comandú, Mulegé, and and Loreto in number of inhabitants. If you don't go often to Los Cabos, you will notice each time that you go, there's one more development and another one and another one. And we would think that by 2030, there's going to be maybe 3,040,000 inhabitants. If we know that at least in theory there is no water for new concessions. So where are they going to get the water, these developments? If we okay. So
tal vez se recuperen 1 millón o 2 millones de metros cúbicos, tal vez 3. Obras de recarga.
Okay, so if there's improvement in the systems, then we can recover some. The systems can be more. They can be optimized. That could be one thing. Sorry, I've been told that it's his connection, the one that's the problem. So I'll just translate whatever I can. Apologies. Okay. Like mentioned previously, there are different kinds of desalination techniques. Some are at big scale and some are at a smaller scale. So okay, let's hope this one is clear. So desalination is a very lucrative business, and this is what makes us nervous. So there's a company that makes it, and then it is managed by somebody else, and then so there are costs added, and so in several countries in different countries, in America, in the Bahamas, in Maldives, in Malta, they use a lot of desalination plants. So this is technology which reflects the advance of humanity. So finally, what we wonder is what is going to happen with all the brine that goes in the sea. How would you protect social vulnerable sectors? So if it's installed where it is economically doable.
que siga, por favor, para terminar. La que sigue. Ok. Porque miren, el tema del costo del agua.
Okay.
Desde el agua agrícola que cuesta 20.
So with the water that is used for agriculture, it has a value of 0.20 pesos
Pagas 10 pesos metro cúbico. Luego el agua de pipa, alrededor de
by a cubic meter.
El agua de garrafón.
Then you've got the water that you use for domestic uses, then for the communities, and then what you drink, the bottled water, is more and more expensive. So the cost of water so what is the cost of the desalinized water, like in Saudi Arabia?
Principalmente las compañías privadas.
It is bought especially mainly by private companies. So there's an agreement with the government, and for the benefit of the users, and there is a circular economy and a management, reasonable management of the wells.
El tema de la contaminación y los costos. La que sigue, por favor. Y bueno, esto debería de quedar en un tema de gobernanza.
So this is a subject for the government, the chain of management. I'm sorry, I think this is not making much sense, but I keep on missing what he says. I'm sorry.
Para todos, sí, y acuífero, porque entonces no es posible otorgar nuevas concesiones, pero si se sigue.
So it is not possible to give all the permits that people are applying that companies are applying for. So we have to look for new resources very, very soon, because we are running out of time. So thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Gracias, Dr. Troyo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Troyo. This puts us in an alert, because it is obvious that we need new methods to provide water. We had a bit of a few problems with your transmission. Fortunately, your graphics and the text helped us to give it continuity. We have people joining us from San Jose del Cabo, Cabo Pulmo, etc., Rancho, and from Santiago. Thank you all very much. Let me remind you that you can make as many questions and comments in our chat as you want. Now we are going to present Engineer Tatiana David Monson.
Sí, muchas gracias. Muy buenas tardes a todos.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. In principle, these webinars where experts, a lot of experts have been invited, but that is not my case. I'm here to complement some of the information on the desalination plants that are in Baja California South, and to give more information and context on the subject. So you can see in your screen, this is an inventory of the desalination plants in BCS, exclusively of public use. You know, especially in the area of Los Cabos, there are many plants that are private, from hotels or from some tourist developments, but these are the ones that we have registered for public use. So we have it by columns, the name of the desalination plant, the location, place where they are, the number of inhabitants of those communities, the source of provision, if it's taken directly from the sea, and then you see the processes that are being carried out. You can see in that column that there are most of osmosis, and you have also a column with the energy sources. So we see Puerto Alcatraz in Isla Margarita. Its source of energy is you see the capacity in meters per second, sorry, and the real cost. And it is in gallons per minute, and it is a very used term in costs of desalination, and it's also in liters per second. We can also see Bahia Magdalena in Kamandú. So if you see by the number of inhabitants, most of these communities are fishing communities. They are communities with few inhabitants in many cases, except we are going to see, except in the area of Los Cabos, where we have a huge desalination plants. The rest of them are coastal, where they are mainly the only source of provision. There's no other way of getting water, just bringing it from other parts of the state towards the island, or desalination. So you have a list of 11 plants. Some of them are in operation, some are not, and we are going to, well, I would like to emphasize that in some places, there's this desalination plant which is operated by Loreto. It's not being used right now, and right now they are using alternative sources. There is close by a spring and a well, and when there is a lot of demand, they get it they get it by truck. In the observations column, I'm going to show who is in charge of those plants. If you see the first ones, the two first ones, it's the commission, the water commission of the state, and you see San Evaristo and Puerto Chales and La Ventana. You see that those desalination plants are managed by La Paz. They operate in Cabo San Lucas, like the big plants in the country. It can do 150 liters per second, and it's operated by the operating organism of Los Cabos. If you see El Dátil, Isla Natividad, and in La Freidera, you can see those plants that are of whom the commission, the water commission, is in charge. But the commission, the state water commission, is in charge of a few of them that are in this map. They are all in the Pacific side. One of them at the north in Isla Natividad. We have in La Freidera, Campo Delgadito, El Dátil, and those are all fishing areas, and the only possibility of getting water is desalination. Here you have some photographs of these areas. Isla Natividad in Mulegé, it's one of the few that are provided by solar panels. They started operating in 2020, and the system is inverse osmosis, and you have all the batteries and filters, and And here you have the next photograph.
Esta que tenemos aquí es en Puerto Magdalena.
This is in Puerto Magdalena. It's also an island, and it's also operated by the State Commission of the State Water Commission, and in the daily operation is carried out by the community. There is citizen committees that are in charge of the daily operation. The population, the community buys the diesel for their plants. They use diesel as the energy for these plants. And here you have this other plant, desalination plant in La Freidora. Here, many of these plants offer, besides drinking water, in this case, it has they also make the big bottles of water, the big gallons, and with the money that they get, they buy the diesel, and they support the running of the plant. The State Water Commission is in charge of overseeing this and provides the infrastructure. The government, the state government, is in charge of the preventive maintenance and corrective, and also to help the citizen committees. Here you have another of the desalination plants. This is in El Delgadito in Mulegé. If you see in the photo on the left, there are two. This is the only one that is mobile. In one of the you have diesel, a generator that works with diesel, and the other building, the other structure is the plant itself. And here you have El Dátil in Mulegé. It's a plant that is started in 2008 that also inverse osmosis, and here you have the equipment that is being used at the moment. Finally, here you have the plant in Puerto Alcatraz in Comondú. This is an area as well, a fishing area. It is also an island, and it is again the only source of provision. So this equipment is operated by the community since 2019, as the government of the state, the Water Commission. We are in charge of the commission. In charge of the maintenance. So with this year, for instance, with lots of water this year, there was some damage to the structures. So we just try to fix it so that the community can keep on using them. So these are all the photos that I have, and it is important to observe that this need of the communities and the participation they have in the desalination. So it is the working of these plants is these families appreciate very much the water, and they are very efficient in their use, which doesn't happen in many places, in most places. The small communities make a very conscious use, very personal use of the water. Thank you. This is all. This is all I've got.
Sí, muchas gracias, maestra.
Yes, thank you very
Jaime,
much.
por enriquecernos con estas fotografías, el mapa de ubicación.
Thank you for the maps and photographs
Cómo están funcionando y qué tan grandes son.
and for the information on how they are working. So now we are going to deal with several questions.
Me hacen señas para decir quién quiere contestarlas, ¿sí?
So I'll ask the question and you let me know who wants to answer.
Luego empezamos con las del público.
So first let me read some questions we had prepared. What is necessary? What do we need to get desalination as a methodology that that can be used by the totality of the population? Would anybody like to answer? Okay. Okay, so what we need is diffusion, more divulgation, so that these taboos and this lack of knowledge, technology. Okay, here we go.
Ahora sí se nos quedó congelado, doctor Troyo. Entonces,
so sorry, Dr. Troyo, your image froze. So okay, you were saying spreading information on the benefits of the desalination treatments. Thank you.
Perdón, ¿alguien más?
Sí, bueno, yo creo que es relevante que las personas.
Yes, I think it is relevant that people in some way have the idea, like where it is the only way of to get water.
Muy informativa plática que nos acaban de dar. El problema es cuando, por ejemplo,
the problem is when, for instance, the use is more like of much more extraction, like for instance, golf courses or that kind of to use desalination for that kind of uses in a so for the use of people in a colony, then there can be a lot of social unrest when there is that lack of equality, when water is a resource that should be, well, it costs water, but if a private company is investing money in the system, well, people will say, why are they desalination why are they using so much water when we don't have enough? But as a society, we have to be conscious that so that it is all related to the place where we live. So besides knowing the real impact of like everything we do has an impact, but we have to always make the best decisions. The people, when they are explained what is going on, they are able to accept it. So if we know there is a water deficit, then we should have a plant. And the question is, how would people realize what the cost is by different techniques, and how decisions are taken on what way to use. So should decide if it's water from the sea or water from two wells that are too salty, etc. So we are going to leave this subject to the end, because in our experience there are many many pros and cons. So let's continue with the questions. What is more, the cost or the benefit of desalination plants at a big scale in Baja California? Okay.
Bueno, yo quisiera contribuir
So I would like to say it's important to bear this question of cost benefit. There are localities where there is no alternative, so the benefit is superior to the cost. Nothing is more costly than what we don't have. So precisely, as a government or as a society, we have to look for to be in the measure to accomplish the least environmental impact. We cannot generalize. It is important to study every subject to take the best decisions. If there has to be an analysis of the cost benefits of each case individually. Yes, thank you. And in fact, we have seen different methodologies to gather water, but definitely the one that can get the biggest amount of water is desalination. And yes, mainly we cannot generalize. We have to go specifically case by case. Other question, mainly we use foreign technology for desalination plants. Does that make it more complex in the long term, or is it appropriate?
Sí. No, adelante, ingeniero.
Sí, pues definitivamente, pues es un
inconveniente. It is an inconvenience that we haven't been able to develop it at the technology at a national level. We are always depending on foreign technology, and we have been lagging behind. And we have to get going. This is one of the main disadvantages that technology is foreign. Thank you. And so keep on working and giving incentives to new projects under the conditions that we have to carry out this kind of activity. Okay, another question. Where could we get here in BCS the energy to operate effectively a desalination plant at low cost and in an environmentally sustainable way? Where can we get the energy? In fact, La Paz, for instance, or the whole state, the gas comes from a plant in Texas. I saw there was a chat where you can see that all the petrol has to travel all the Gulf of Mexico through a gasoduct in the Gulf of Mexico, get into boats and bring it to La Paz. And from La Paz, take it by truck to the rest of the state. So when one realizes the enormous amount of technology that it takes, how we realize how dependent we are on energy. Even if Mexico produces a lot of petrol, the truth is that we don't have plants that produce the gasoline that is used for our cars. So one could think an easy answer is solar energy, to develop technologies. The developed countries have decades, are decades ahead of us. So what are scientists doing? In fact, the budget that is invested in science is very low. We should invest 1% of the PBI, but we use a lot less than that. So in fact, Mexico, not only the peninsula, it depends in a great measure on foreign. So we are really vulnerable in that. So like right now with the situation with Ukraine and how Europe depends on the gas from Russia, etc. Then there's a world, and so the world is very interconnected economically and energetically. So our local problems are really connected to other situations in other parts of the world. Some of the alternative sources could be like solar energy, like Baja is excellent for that, but the batteries are still very expensive. All the technology associated is very expensive. But so, for instance, it's very good to warm up water, but it's not like the same thing to heat up our boilers or use that energy to desalinize very big volumes of water. What I think it could be implemented in the next few years, solar technology for small plants, as it is being done right now in fishing ports. But we go back to the same. We depend on the panels and a lot of material that they are made massively in China, and that causes problems. So you do one thing, but you depend on foreign technology. It's a very good question, difficult to answer. Where could we get the energy? Right now, simply petrol. It's still the best option for energy in the short term. And also cost related is the best. So here we have some comments from our public. And so we have Los Cabos has a lot of growth because of the huge investments in tourism, which provokes serious environmental and social problems. Lack of water, difficulty to treat residual waters, etc. So investment be regulated, forcing so that to create new developments, if they can provide all their own water, etc. We have another comment. What can be done with the brine? What use can it be given, or how could it be treated? Seawater has all the elements of the periodic table of elements. There is gold and other things. To extract all these elements require very costly techniques. In Saudi Arabia, they are making a lot of money by once the water you get the salt out of the water, then you take all the elements that have commercial value. For what I have been able to read, they are in experimental phases. The cost to obtain the different elements that are not so accessible to be commercialized is very high. There are several plants that use brine, and they can produce salt, but salt, like we have in Guerrero Negro, is where we have one of the biggest saline plants in the world. It's used with evaporation, and they require a very big pumping system, but it could be a good solution. For instance, I see now that possibility. The use that is used for the salines in Guerrero Negro. It could be also plant water like the one that comes out of desalination. So maybe it could be an area to explore.
Tenemos el
Okay, thank you.
Rob Wemer. ¿Quién sabe cómo se pronuncia?
We have a comment here. In general, brine is diluted with salt water, and but sometimes it's used to make marine salt. In Arabia, they are trying to use all the salts as products. And one question.
Participación de los colegas. Una pregunta. Si bien sabemos que un criterio importante en la operación de una desalinizadora es la descarga de salmuera, ¿qué proceso o tratamiento sugieren para reducir el impacto?
What process do you suggest to reduce the impact of the brine in water produced by the desalination? In Spain and other places? Okay, well, here in the university about 5 or 6 years ago, there was an international forum for desalination, and we have to ask Dr. Lorena for
de predilución y dispersión. Otra tecnología adicional que hay que
another.
Claro. Sí, porque es bien importante.
I don't know what. I didn't understand. So it is very important to get control and following.
Otra pregunta de Rob Wemer. Este es para usted, ingeniera Tatiana.
A question for Dr. Tatiana, engineer.
Privadas hay?
Do you know how many private desalination plants are and what capacity they have?
Oficialmente no se lleva
Officially, there is no inventory on the private ones. Unfortunately, when they started to proliferate, this the control, the government control was overwhelmed because those were new technologies, so there was no follow-up. The Water Commission have control of the discharges of water, and also recently the updating of the normativity to know when parts are directly accessible from the sea. So that has made very difficult to get an inventory of private plants and even less of their capacity. We know of areas with big developments like Los Cabos. Most of the big developments are connected to the aquifers, but they have an alternative source, especially for emergency, to use the desalination. But we don't know for a fact. We don't have an inventory.
También dio respuesta a la pregunta de Sara y Gómez Villada, que preguntaba sobre si había algún monitoreo ambiental en los sitios donde se encuentran operando
if there was an environmental impact study on the areas where there are desalination plants. So you answered that question already. So impact of the brine and desalination. With the brine, the temperature
inhibidores de incrustaciones y agentes quelantes utilizados para mantener limpias las membranas tiene efectos muy negativos en los organismos bentónicos, en particular los corales. ¿Qué tipo de ingesta se propone para disminuir el arrastre de huevos y larvas? ¿Qué estudios se han realizado en los organismos marinos en el Mar de Cortés
So what studies have been carried out in the sea, in the organisms and in the inhabitants of the sea? What is the effect that the brines and this desalination are going to have in all of them? Are there any models? Are they managed to? Okay, so there are a lot of people are worried about the impact of these brines.
Sí, bueno, efectivamente.
Yes, in truth, I have for 35 years been working in the Gulf of California, and in fact, there is no study to know the impact of the desalination plants, because it's a technology that has been developed in Baja in the previous decades, but not for long. In the technology itself of commercial plants has developed so much that they are always thinking of the impact, considering the impact they might have. One of the things is the organisms they capture, but also if the quality, the water quality, is good for people. Are there any pollutants, or if it's in an area where there's a bit of pollution? So, I mean, you might take the salt out of the water, but it might still be polluted. Or if there are nocive algae, like some kinds of phytoplankton are toxic. And during all over the world, there have been closures of plants during some certain periods, because it was not healthy to use the water from the sea. With regards to desalination, there are systems that absorb water from the underground, like what happened in Melbourne, Australia. There was the biggest plant in the southern hemisphere for like 1 million people. They planned not to do it in the outskirts of Melbourne because of the lobster fishing factories. They decided to do it 200 kilometers north of the city. They kind of in an area with dunes. They decided to make this underground, so I put dunes on top, and there was less noise, and the water intake was like 200 meters at the depth of 200 meters, and taking it from there where there is a lot less concentration of organisms, which are typically in the first 100 meters. So in a way, it can be in Mexico. This could be foreseen if they are going to make an investment. They should take into account that it should have the less environmental impact. The use of brine is something that is being developed. We should think doing some research on the water of brine. And it is something that is being developed in areas of the north of Mexico, where water is really a difficult resource. We should start thinking, like in 10 years, we need to have the development, intelligent ways of obtaining water.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Una aclaración que hace Sara Villaga.
Sara Gómez wants to clear up. She asked about the environmental monitoring of the government, not the private plants. Is there any monitoring? Yes, the plants operated by the state commission, there's no monitoring. The volume that they operate with is a minimum. It doesn't mean that it's causing any impact, but practically it is just for human consumption. No, we are not carrying out any monitoring.
Muchas gracias, ingeniero.
Thank you very much. I would like to make it clear that in the case of big plants, like in Cabo San Lucas, that had all the environmental studies and they carry out a monitoring, and they have to accomplish a few periodic lineaments about its operation and about the environmental damages because of the big volume of the plant. Yes, some of these questions that we still don't have answers for could be clear research projects carried out by the scientific community. And
última participación
there's
son dos
the last
Vicente Salgado y Higuera. Para la Bahía de La Paz o en la costa
most,
del Pacífico, cerca de Conquista Agraria, ¿se podría poner una desalinizadora?
Could there be a desalination plant installed? Sorry, I missed where.
¿Sí?
Question. From the point of view of the engineering, yes, it could be a desalination plant could be installed anywhere, but we have to meet research and so, but environmentally sustainable lineaments. So it has to be studied, but from the point of view of the engineering, almost everything can be done, but the benefit cost has to be taken into account. And from the Aeolic Park that is in the Sierra and the Northeast Sierra of the La Paz, it generates the most in the early hours of the day. Could it not be used towards the desalination plant? The eolic energy. Personally, I think it's one of the options that have to be analyzed. As Mexico, Baja California South, we have developed this technology very little, and we need to do more. Our state, because of its geographical conditions and the climate, we really need, we have been very much involved in this area about the most. We cannot discard anything. The idea of having these webinars, this podcast, is to connect and our academic centers and government centers, and to give way to these studies. So if you would, we are going to watch a video on this subject. I hope it's in English. Have you thought of the water we are using, where it comes from? So these are the basins. In them, a part of the water, of the rainwater, filters, and it goes through the rivers and goes to the sea, and another part evaporates, forms the clouds, and then it rains. In the basins, this dynamic determines the availability of water. So to have an So we have to have good management of the water to be able to cover all the necessities. Nuestra Agua is a platform of collective construction in which we give information to create the first interactive map of water in Mexico. Through all these questions about water, who works on it, where does it come from, where it goes, what problems, risks, alternatives, proposals to solve the problems. The application divided into several basins gives us way to understand and it foments working experiences, exchanges of working experiences. The collective collaboration is fundamental for to get these organizations that work in favor of preserving water and natural resources, so that they are the base of social participation and implementation of public policies towards really good management of the water. You're invited to find out more about us, that organization.
Bueno, pues ya estamos casi por terminar.
So we are about to finish. We would like to hear from Engineer Tatiana if it's possible to give us her final comments on this webinar. Thank you.
Yo quisiera hacer un comentario final de la serie de conversatorios que hemos tenido.
I would like to say today is the last one of this series of webinars programmed for this year. Maybe next year we will keep going, and it's very important to keep on talking about water, to keep on approaching people that know about the subject, and the decisions that we have to take as citizens, as governments, as users. They don't have to be subject to the good balance or to just our wishes. We have to be supported on research and scientific techniques, and with the participation of all the society. So that in order to be successful, we all have to participate. So I'm inviting you to keep going with activities like this, and there are many subjects related to water, like we have seen along this webinar, and we have to keep on talking about it to do better use and to have better quality of life. Water is definitely the most valuable resource.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Y también comentarles a todos ustedes que
so I want to comment to all of you.
Bien lo dijo el ingeniero, vamos a continuar.
So we are going to keep developing this project with different materials, so that we create a conscience. I just want to thank all the people that have been connected to this, to all the speakers and all the people that have been behind cameras, etc., to be able to present. There's been a lot of effort, and so we have to focus and work for Baja California South. We would like to show you our diplomas of appreciation to all the speakers. So
la Universidad Autónoma de Baja
So the University of Baja California South, the State Water Commission, the CONAGUA, and so you are presenting this diploma of appreciation to each of them in the context of this desalination, this talk on desalination. So thank you for being part of the network of scientists that work to bring us solutions to face the crisis of scarcity of water that we are suffering in the area and in Mexico. So it is signed. It is signed by Engineer Tatiana, who is here with us, and then somebody from the University of Baja California South, and Paulina Goidoy Aguilar from the Baja Coastal Institute. And so we have one more, another distinction for Dr. Jaime Gómez. Same, exactly. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And let me remind you again that we will be, the recording will be in Facebook, and you can all access it. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.